You're live, JD.
Yo. Happy Thursday, episode 22, actually. Title's
22,
wrong.
my bad.
It is 22. Oh,
Well,
man.
it's my 21st episode.
Are you the only one that matters? I think so.
Well, I am the one who makes the title, so.
That's a true story. You're pretty much the one that does all the work for this. I just show up and smile. So anyways, here we are. It's Thursday. It's been an action-packed few weeks. We seem to have started the pod at the right time.
The exact right moment.
Perfect right moment. There's been so much shit going on. But anyways, what are we talking about today?
Okay, first of all, we got to start with Arbitrum and the drop. And hopefully the game, the drop. Arbitrum. And then we're going to move into Europe. We missed all the European news this week because, Americans. But we've got Credit Suisse, are they the next SVB? And we're moving into smart contracts, digital identity, Europium, the European blockchain, and maybe just pointing out some of the conjecture of these components. Are you ready? Are you ready to go?
I'm ready. Welcome back to the show. Hey, I'm going to start this off with a shout out to Ambar Wallet. SPF owes me money. I mean, nothing. Own your assets. Keep that shit in self-custody. Shirt's a little big, but love it. There's another one coming tomorrow from these guys. I got two. So tomorrow, Friday. I will rep the other one, but this is like probably the funniest merch that I found.
I love it.
And it makes me want to wear it all the time. So shout out to our friends at Ambar Wallet. Check them out. Definitely worth checking out.
SPF did become a household name, just maybe not in the way he had hoped.
Well, yeah. And he kind of made the news a little bit over the last couple of days. I know this wasn't in our preamble.
Go for it.
But two things. First of all, it's surfaced now with fairly high level of confidence that SPF and his inner circle took out approximately $3.5 billion from FTX, which is kind of insane. But obviously, the company was going bananas. Everything was going buck wild. They were making money hand over fist, obviously, because they were, acting a little bit inappropriately, I suppose. Again, we'll let the courts figure all that out. But no matter who you are, I think we can all agree that there was some weird shit going on there. So anyways, in the wake of that, at the same time, SPF's lawyers are petitioning for the courts to get their insurance company, so their director and officer insurance, which helps cover you for this type of thing, trying to force the insurance providers to pay out first, because clearly it seems that SPF is running out of money, which begs the question, where the hell is the 3.5 billion? Are they trying to pretend that it's gone and it's just sitting somewhere and somebody else is like, anyways, hilarious. SPF owes me money, but actually owes me nothing because, we should be self-custodying. That's kind of what we're all building. That's the whole point of blockchain and Web3. And I know for the longest time, these centralized actors were kind of the preferred middle ground for a lot of institutions and a lot of kind of newer entrants into the markets. But what we're seeing is the same problems that exist in TradFi, yet on steroids without oversight and regulation. Bad shit happens. Almost every major kind of quasi-centralized platform has had significant issues, exceptions being currently Binance and Coinbase, knocking on wood. But pretty much everybody else has been, either is no longer or has had some serious problems. So anyways.
And banks.
Self-custody.
Banks are having a great time either.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, let's start on a good note. Arbitrum.
Yeah. Is it a good note?
It's here.
Okay, so go FUD yourself. I'm going to FUD you right now, or at least FUD this topic. So Arbitrum, obviously the teasing of an airdrop has caused, in my opinion, is the only reason for Arbitrum's crazy explosion in locked value and activity, because everybody's trying to game the airdrop. They're trying to do all the things that they think previous airdrops have accounted for, and they're trying to do it at scale. And so if you look at the Optimism airdrop, and if you look at others that came before that, there was some pretty significant airdrop values, assuming that the fully diluted valuation is incredibly high. So I'm seeing a whole bunch of people on crypto Twitter and all these other places saying, oh, I hope that Arbitrum goes to $10 a token. What? That would make it $100 billion valuation, which is like absolutely absurd. And so I think the expectations versus the likely reality here are significantly mismatched. The other thing that was like a huge buzzkill for many people. Now, I don't have a horse in this race. I'm not airdrop farming on Arbitrum. I do think Arbitrum is actually a great layer 2, but I don't think it's as great as everybody's acting it like it is right now because of the airdrop farming. Problem is, people are being really let down here because they expected Arbitrum to use the ARB token as gas. They expected it to have more utility in the ecosystem, but the buzzkill in the announcement was governance only. Oh, but it is more simple to propose to make governance proposals, according to them, and that's the silver lining. So we'll have to see. I mean, generally, what happens is something I don't want to play with. It's super volatile. You really have no idea. Sometimes there's institutional players that are doing everything they can to maintain a certain valuation. In this case, I would argue that's probably going to happen. There's probably some fairly deep pockets that have a strong vested interest in this, but we don't know. I mean, the natural game theory on this generally is it becomes a dump fest. Everybody just dumps their airdrop as fast as they can. Now, I did the opposite with Uniswap, which was a similar thing, and it actually rocketed after everybody dumped. So if you look at the Optimism chart, which was governance only, and a lot of people were annoyed by, this may resemble something similar, but I don't know. It's a tough one. It's such a flyer.
It's important to note here that they're proposing doing governance a little bit differently than we might have seen before. So people might not be as funny going forward about being a governance token. The concept that they're using is that it's self-executed. So instead of you voting on something and then hoping that they do it, the DAO will also control the Arbitrum Foundation, which means they'll actually have money and fees generated by the transactions on Arbitrum. So this is kind of nice, whereas you're not trying to, as a group, hold a project team accountable, but you actually know that you're in control of the assets so that it can happen, which is probably the right direction.
Your microphone's doing that thing again. Was for that whole spiel. But I don't know. Maybe it's time. Ask the company you work for.
This is the fancy microphone. Is that better?
No bueno. Anyways, yeah, I mean, that's a little bit of a red herring, I think, because governance, that's the point of governance generally anyways. Like almost every major governance portal allows anybody to make proposals if you have a certain amount of the token and if you can get a quorum. So a little interesting, like they're obviously trying to put some lipstick on the pig, knowing that there was a lot of backlash for Optimism. Anyways, I think, regulatory uncertainty is probably part of what's leading to this. They're just not sure. They want to make sure that, the token has no other value accrual mechanisms. But anyways, it was one of those things that everybody's like super fired up about. All I've heard is Arbitrum airdrop for the last, 3-4 months. And now this comes out and there's a whole bunch of people kicking and screaming about this. So anyways, advice here.
They're also using Nansen to determine token eligibility so that people can't airdrop farm. Did you see that?
I didn't see that part. No.
So you can't use fake organic DeFi platforms to position yourself for an airdrop. You had to have been active.
Yeah. And I think that's what sparked a lot of the activity, right? Is everybody kind of knew that you're going to have to use the DeFi applications. You're going to have to make trades. You're going to have to do all these different things to be eligible. And the more you did from the more wallets, the more airdrop you got. And that,
so is this announcement what you wanted? Is this what you wanted to hear from Arbitrum today?
Again, I don't really care, but I think the general consensus that I've been seeing is people are not super pleased about this. It's somewhat predictable, but there's a lot of people kicking and screaming and complaining about it. I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that are still going to get 6-figure airdrops for effectively playing around with an ecosystem. And to Arbitrum's defense, I mean, they've been a top tier performer in terms of activity, TVL, transaction volume, all of these things over the last few months because of this airdrop hype. Good for them. They're on everybody's mind. They're the topic of frequent conversation. So anyways, something to check out, something to watch. Again, be careful if you're going to try to play the launch of the token and so on after the airdrop. Not financial advice, but it's not a simple thing. You have to be quite sophisticated. There will be a lot of MEV stuff happening. Most likely there will be a lot of weird bots participating. So, just be careful. Unless you have a conviction and are willing to hold, be careful. That's the suggestion today.
Okay, are you ready to talk about Europe?
Yeah.
I feel like I should preface. There has been a lot of European news in the last couple of weeks that we have not covered because most of it is very conjecture-based. And a lot of it is people saying, I have an idea, I'm going to try and push it through. That doesn't mean that it's news and that doesn't mean that it's happening, but there have been a couple of things that have happened that we should probably address. The first most funny thing ever is Credit Suisse. I'm not saying that Credit Suisse is doing well, but the hype that it is bringing into crypto is absolute and total FUD. It is not nearly as friendly a crypto bank as SVB. It is not nearly as friendly a crypto bank as Silvergate. And if you look into this a little bit more, it's not really news. This has been going on for about 3 months that they're becoming less and less liquid and that their stocks have dropped. Prior to this week, their stock price had dropped in the last 3 months by 93%, I read. So it's not like this is today news, but it is hitting headlines today.
So yeah, this is an interesting piece. I think this is just the tip of the proverbial iceberg. We're going to see a whole lot of this coming out in the next little bit. And because we are news fiends, we're probably going to report on it every time it comes with a similar statement. SVB failure and Silvergate failure and arguably Signature was being investigated for some broker-related activities to do with crypto from like their entire time that they've been participating in the space. But none of that was caused by crypto. Crypto was just the unknowing bystander because a whole bunch of USDC happened to be the custody of the US dollars was in SVB. Anyways, Credit Suisse, huge international bank. They're not just localized to any one particular country. They're all over the place, all over Europe. They're common in North America, common in Asia. I mean, the banking sector globally is going to have this same issue that the US banking sector has. And so we're probably going to see a whole bunch of these banks going, oh crap, we totally mismatched our interest rate models for how we can gain yield and what duration we have relative to expected inflows and outflows of deposits. And that's coupled with all of these banks not raising their rates on deposits. So meanwhile, the rates of T-bills and mortgage bonds and all these other relatively close to risk-free as you can be, so they say, bonds are earning so much more yield that your depositors are also going, instead of earning 0.025 or 0.25% at the bank on my $3 billion in deposits, maybe it makes sense for me to take some money out. And that's what starts the kind of squeeze on the banks, is you get some people that are just taking money out because of opportunity cost. And the banks were trying to keep their profits super high. Like they were printing money for shareholders by having this mismatch where they're earning, 5, 6, 7% yield on the deposits and they're paying out 0.25% or 0.5% or whatever. Like obviously that was printing money for these banks. So their incentive obviously to shareholders was, let's print money. Problem is, for some reason, the global banking system didn't seem to understand that rising interest rates due to global inflation being out of control was going to create significant devaluation of these long duration bonds. Anyways,
okay,
the Swiss government.
Before we move on from Credit Suisse, one,
okay.
I don't want to underplay this. I don't want to downplay it. It is a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
And I read, I believe it's 53 billion or 58 billion. I think it's 53 billion is being lent to Credit Suisse as a bailout, essentially. So like this isn't small potatoes. I'm not trying to say it's funny, it's not happening. But the concept of it being impacting crypto massively or being impacted by crypto is very funny. Quite a few articles that I found had titles that were like, because Bitcoin is breaking 25K this week, Credit Suisse is failing, and you need to be careful because it's not true.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not true.
It's not true. I do want to touch on one other thing though, because what I see a lot of people asking questions about like, but why would the stock price die? Right. And why didn't the stock price die in SVB and Silvergate and Signature? And the answer is people are armed with more information now. They're seeing that in the US, which generally is the tail that wags the global dog, they're seeing that they're not bailing out shareholders, of course. They're actually penalizing shareholders for making such egregious decisions in the wake of economic uncertainty. So they're saying, forget this, because Silvergate shareholders were wiped out, Signature shareholders completely wiped out, Silicon Valley Bank shareholders completely wiped out. There's lawsuits now suing the board of directors and suing the leadership teams, specifically Signature Bank, but others as well. I mean, as a shareholder in the banking system, I mean, unless we have some sort of like, once the global governments come out and say, yeah, we're going to backstop our banking, then that'll kind of chill out a little bit, I think. The larger problem is there's no incentive for these guys to change what they're doing, because if there's no risk to them or the depositors, then they're going to continue taking these risky bets to maximize shareholder value. And that's their job. A board of directors and an executive team is to maximize value for shareholders. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean ignore risk, systemic risk to the system and your depositors. Anyways, we can move on from Credit Suisse and all of this banking fun, but Europe is not immune to it. You know, the Swiss central bank has said they're going to cover it. I think we're going to see a lot of this happening in the UK, Germany, other major European systems are going to be squeezed.
Not financial advice. We're not advising a bank run on all your favorite banks.
Absolutely not. I actually don't think there's going to be bank runs allowed, to be honest. I think
just throwing that out there. Okay, the next thing that I want to hear of in the last week.
I had one more point, but it's quasi-financial. No, it's quasi-financial advice, so we're going to leave it. Okay, what is the EU doing to smart contracts?
Yeah, so this was really interesting. Pretty controversial, came out basically saying that smart contracts need to have a kill switch. And of course, anybody who's in crypto is like, nope, that's not how that works. That is not how blockchain works. The whole point is being immutable. You can't just kill the contract. You can't just kill the transactions, because part of this kill switch is the idea that the transactions can be reset and that there can be refunds and so on and so forth. And so people are not happy about it. And I have a few things to say about this, just to sort of clear up some of the FUD and clear up some of the hype around it. One, it did get voted on. I have to say, good work, EU, because more than 100 people abstained, basically because they don't have the information they would need to vote on such a thing. And I thought that was pretty impressive to say, we have no clue, why would we vote on this? And maybe if more people had abstained, this would go back to draft form, but it didn't. It kind of got passed. But the issue is that it wasn't actually that specific. So something got passed, but nobody knows what a kill switch really means for it. And there wasn't like a lot of information about what it's supposed to be. So my hypothesis here is that if you actually go to the European Commission, they are basically just trying to use the policies they already have for purchasing digital content and services for digital contracts for Europe. They're trying to take how that works and they're trying to apply it to blockchain. And it isn't all bad. They just don't really know what they're doing. So what they typically are looking at is that maybe you downloaded music and it won't play. They want you to be able to have some way to refund it and make sure that if digital content or digital services are faulty, that you have the right to remedy it. So you can ask for the problem to be fixed. You can ask the trader to reimburse you. You can get a price reduction or terminate the contract and get a refund. So the issue is that they're taking the concept of smart contracts and they're trying to use that as typical contract. Right? But this isn't any new information. They're just trying to impose rules that already exist on a new type of technology. And so I see where it's coming from. I understand why they're doing it. They just maybe it's pretty funny in crypto. Basically, all blockchain people are like, how do you think we're going to do it? And then, of course, the other FUD here is that people say, if we're anonymous or we're not governed by the EU, why do you think we would do it? And that, of course, comes to they can block you.
Well, it's the same as saying, well, we don't live in the US, but why do we care about US regulations? Exactly. I mean, because if a single US person or person living in the US uses your protocol, then you are now subject to US laws and regulations. So this is like, okay, so this to me points out a few pretty important things about regulation in the space currently. Is often the people that are proposing a lot of this regulation and the people that are charged with voting on it in these government environments, often they don't really understand the technology. And it is novel, it is bespoke, it's confusing. I mean, we've been here since 2015, 16, and I'm still confused and learning stuff all the time and getting shit wrong all the time. And so I'm glad I'm not a policymaker or in government, because that would suck. But I think it's important that, you know, we need to step up the lobby game, join organizations like the Blockchain Association, Global DCA, GBA. Like we need to have support from industry to be able to start lobbying these people globally. And at the very least, lobbying just for them to at least understand the technology before they make decisions. And that, I think, is what's kind of been plaguing a lot of these quasi attempts at regulation, is that they just don't have all the information. So how can they make meaningfully applicable regulations? Now, this is also a slippery slope. So this is my second point on this, and you did a really good job teeing it up. But it's a slippery slope in a lot of ways, actually. But the first one really is, like, on the surface, it's generally pretty easy to get people on board for this thing. Oh, you got a faulty product? Yeah, you should get a refund. Or something didn't work? Yeah, there should be some form of recourse. What needs to be noticed here is that this isn't the old system. So, like, this is something different than Web 2. And so there's going to be some, I'm going to say compromise, but the definition doesn't directly apply. It's not necessarily a compromise, but there's going to have to be a migration of how things are done and the amount of personal responsibility people take and their assessment of risk to maintain so many of the technical innovations embedded in blockchain technology. Immutability, obviously, composability across different platforms. You need to have the potential for self-custody. You know, there's global access to markets, all of these things. You can't deprecate those value adds in an effort to bring us back to what we already have. Otherwise, if we just take all the rules for everything we already have, eventually we're going to revert to the mean. And as a space, as a society, we've determined that the mean is not ideal. There's a lot of stuff we can do to make things better. Now, do I think that regulated environments are going to require some version of a kill switch or reorging blockchain transactions or freezing funds or having some quasi-centralized control over this stuff? I think so. I think there's no way around it. The regulators, their whole point is to protect consumers. At least that's what it's supposed to be. The whole point is to protect consumers. And I think there are some things, especially in crypto, where because there's no protection for consumers, there's a lot more opportunity for fraud. The reason this is a slippery slope is because there's some really obvious examples of where that makes sense. Theft, fraud, the protocol rugging, like some of these like really obvious, like hugely detrimental things. The problem is it's very subjective. What is hugely detrimental? So maybe we've got SBF that is talking shit about regulators, and for no real legal reason, the regulators say, well, he's dissenting, so we're not going to allow him to participate in these markets. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, to them that might make sense, but to the rest of us, that's going, whoa, 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 whoa. Like it's just opening the door for censorship. It's opening the door for cancellation, which is the problem with the current situation. Is there's so much gray area and subjective decision making and a lack of transparency that it's very hard to predict what will happen. And for that reason, there's a ton of bureaucracy in the middle, and it's not simple to get anything done anyways. But you as the consumer have very little insight and very little ability to manage your situation. In this case, that could do the exact same if they don't have very rigid definitions and very rigid understandings of the limitations of the technology. So FUD, yeah, I don't think this is even possible to just apply to the crypto sphere, you know, in one foul swoop. Like, I just don't think it's going to work. But it is something that I think we can't just sit on our hands and hope for the best. I think as a space, as users, as participants, as builders, as entrepreneurs, we have to contribute to the lobby, contribute to sharing information with regulators and members of government and policymakers. It's on us. Otherwise, we're the only ones to blame in the end. We're the only ones to blame in the end if crypto gets killed by improper regulation. I don't think it will, honestly, but it's up to us to make sure that doesn't happen.
It's interesting what you say too about personal responsibility. That's something that we don't really have in our consumer sphere anymore, right?
No.
You order something from Amazon, and if you made a late night stupid decision, you can probably get a refund, which isn't really the case in crypto. In my household, we call those $5 lessons, but externally, they are usually called internal and external locus. I happen to the world, or the world happens to me, right? Yeah. And in crypto, we happen to the world, right? Whereas in Web 2, the world happens to me. And so there is a big migration to be made, and there's a big mindset shift to be made. Now, we are at time, so we're going to have some more FU tomorrow about Europe, I think.
I have one more point. We're at time. I know. But I have one more point, and I'm going to blame Costco for the lack of personal accountability. Because at Costco, you don't need a receipt. You don't need the box. You can use the damn thing. And if you take it back for whatever reason, you get 100% refund. Crazy.
Walmart started that, I thought. I thought that was a Walmart thing.
I'm not sure, but
you know, when I worked at Zellers, which is dead Canadian Walmart.
Don't age yourself like that. That's a long time ago.
At that moment in time, this woman would bring back crazy carpets, which are like a snow toboggan sort of thing. She brought them back every 3 days because the return policy was that if it broke within a week, you could have a refund. And so every 3 days, her kids would destroy these toboggans, and then she would bring them back and would give her new ones. And
it's funny because they cost like $2.
That's how Web 2 works. And in Web 3, you bought them, you had a $5 lesson, and you move on.
So funny.
Hey, well, JD, go FUD yourself. Apparently answer the phone, the FUDding phone.
Someone's repetitively calling me, which is always
fun. Must be critical.
Yeah, probably.
Have a great day. Join us tomorrow for FU Friday, where we're going to talk about Europium. And we're going to talk about, I don't know, who else do you want to say FU to?
We're going to say just FU to everybody. FU Friday tomorrow. We're going to go on a rampage. FU everybody. But also, subscribe, like, the bell, do all that shit. Maybe we should get like a little like exit thing, you know, on a lot of podcasts. Like it'll say, hey, like, subscribe,
we have one
all
on
this
YouTube.
shit. Okay, well, we have one on YouTube. But anyways, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. Obviously, we're doing this because we love it and we want to share information. But the more people that can hear about, you know, just some somewhat unbiased news and just having us break down FUD, I think a lot of people could benefit. So please don't be shy. Share. We'll see you tomorrow, 12 p.m. Eastern. Same place. Go FUD yourself.